Today we're going to talk about how to install a DIGNITET, I believe that's how you pronounce it, curtain wire hanger that we recently purchased at IKEA. We also got a third bracket to allow us to run a longer span of the wire. We're actually going to install this in my wife's art studio, and I believe she's going to use it to hang artwork from. These parts that you can see here are all the pieces that came with the kit. The kit does not include screws or wall anchors. You have to pick out your own for that depending on where you're going to mount it. In our case, we're going to mount it in a sheetrock wall. So I'm going to use a number 6 nylon wall driller. It's just a plastic insert, and the appropriate screws that go with it. And it's just some of the things that I keep in my kit around our house for occasional projects like this. You'll also need a Phillips head screwdriver. In my case, we're using Phillips head screws to mount it with. So we'll need a Phillips head screwdriver, a 3/16 inch drill bit, an extension cord, a drill, a tape measure, and a couple other things that I have are a power driver that I like to use. It just speeds up the installation of the screws into the drywall hangers. You want to be careful when you're using this though, and don't over tighten them because it'll strip out these plastic anchors real easy. So that's why I also have a Phillips head screwdriver. And I also like to use, it's just an old ice pick that I have in my toolkit. It helps me to pinpoint where I want to hang a hanger. Like in this case, I'm able to put that up on the wall and just punch a tiny hole in the wall, or even punch it into the sheetrock and let it hang there and make sure it's where I want it to be hung. We purchased the wire hanger to put in my wife's craft art studio, if you will, and she's showing you now on the wall where we're going to hang it. The kit itself comes with enough wire to hang a span of approximately 197 inches, and in our case we're only going to use about 140 inches of the wire, so we'll actually have to trim the wire. And I failed to get out of my toolkit a pair of wire dikes that will be needed to cut this wire, because it is a steel braided wire and it's pretty tough to cut the wire itself. And I don't even have the wire in the picture either. I've got it over to the side, but we'll show you that when we're getting ready to cut it. Okay, what we've done here is we picked out approximately how high we want the left bracket to be, and I've gone ahead and marked the holes on the wall where I want to drill those out. And I'm going to take my drill with a 3/16 inch drill bit and punch these holes into the sheetrock. But what I also noted here, and this is a safety issue, you want to be careful because where we're mounting this is directly above a 3-switch light switch. So I'm almost 100% sure that in this wall there are electrical wires running up into my attic. So you want to punch these just through the sheetrock and not go, deep into the wall. So we're going to do that now. And all we're basically doing is drilling a pilot hole for the plastic anchors that screw into these holes. This part. And I guess we can play music during this part. These are those plastic anchors, and you just screw them into the sheetrock until they get flush, or as close to flush as possible. And you just want to make sure they don't strip out when you're screwing them in. So these are not totally all the way down, but because of the decorative caps that came in the kit, these will be covered once we get the bracket actually attached to these. So now we're going to take the screws that we selected and go ahead and mount the bracket and put the cap on. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and attach the bracket to the wall, and I'm using my power driver just to snug them up. You want to be careful when you're doing this and not strip out those plastic anchors. That's like I was mentioning earlier. You will take your Phillips head screwdriver and just use it to finish tightening the screws down until they make a snug fit. Dead air, huh? And we're taking our Phillips head screwdriver now and just snugging the screws down until they're tight. You don't want to over tighten these again because you're in a plastic drywall anchor and you don't want them to strip out. And once you've got those snug and you're happy with the installation, you can take your decorative cap that came with the kit and slide it on and snap it into place. And we should be through with the left bracket installation part of this project. Okay, what we're doing now is positioning the right side bracket on the other end of the room from where the span of wire is going to run. And what we're actually doing is also making sure that it's going to be as close to level in the room as possible. And what I did was check the measurements from the center of this post to the ceiling, and then also from the center of the post to the floor compared to the opposite end of the room. And it looks like it's pretty much spot on where it is here. I also made sure that the post that doesn't come screwed into the base that comes in the kit is screwed in as tight as it should be, and that the bracket where the wire actually goes into is aiming in the right, or as close to the right, or the correct direction that it needs to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and mark the 3 holes on the sheetrock where it should be attached to the wall. Okay, we've got our 3rd bracket installed, and because we're running such a long span of the wire, and they don't recommend that you go over approximately 55 inches for the wire from one support to another, is why we've chose to put a center support in. And we went ahead and ran the wire through the post while we were up on our step ladder, so we won't have to get that back out and get back up there to it. And now we're going to affix the wire or the cable to the right hand bracket. And before we do that, you want to make sure these little plastic caps that they have on here are still on there and still intact. That's what keeps the wire, the braided wire, from coming unwound when you stick it into the socket where it's actually going to attach. And we're attaching to the right side bracket of the kit, which doesn't actually have any adjustment to it. And you want to make sure that you get the wire actually seated into the bracket all the way when you're affixing it. And there are 2 Allen headed set screws on the bracket that once you get this inserted into the post here, the screws are down here, and they actually give you an Allen wrench in the kit to tighten these with. But you want to make sure that the wire and the little plastic shield goes into the socket all the way. In this case, you can see the plastic shield is trying to slide back out, but we're going to stick that in as far as the wire will go, and you'll feel it seat against the back of the bracket. And then if you have a fingernail, you can take and slide that plastic sleeve on down the rest of the way until it's all the way in there, or take the socket wrench and slide it in there, or the Allen wrench, excuse me, and then you want to take it and tighten down both of the Allen set screws. Okay. Okay, we've got our wire attached to the right hand side bracket. We've run it through the middle support bracket, and we're getting ready to attach it to the bracket on the left hand side. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the bracket with the adjustment. It has this turnbuckle, if you will, which is how you're actually going to tighten the bracket up. And what you want to make sure first is that the turnbuckle is open, if you will. So you want to have threads exposed here and here. And they recommend that you allow approximately 5/8 of an inch in each location as far as having the threads exposed. And that's what we have. So now we're holding up our cable, and because it's longer than what we needed, which we knew it would be, we're getting ready to cut that off. And you want to pull it just somewhat tight. You don't want to, this is not the tightening part of it, but you want it to be fairly tight. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut it off about right here, so it lines up, so the end of the wire, if you will, lines up with the end of the bracket right here once we insert it into the part where the 2 set screws are. We've also slid the plastic sleeve back to right here from the end of the wire down there, and we're going to make our cut, like I said, about right here. Okay, what we've done is we trimmed our wire off to the appropriate length that we needed. We've inserted it in the socket on this end, and I've already tightened the two Allen-headed set screws down. And I'm going to take the Allen wrench, put it in the little hole in the turnbuckle here, and I'm going to start to turn the turnbuckle like so. And what it's going to start doing is tightening up the cable, and you just want to check it and make sure you have it as snug as you want it. And there's still some adjustment there if we need to, but it looks pretty good. It looks like we're finished with our installation. Thanks for watching. For other DIY projects, visit my YouTube channel, DIY Adventure.